Hello, everybody. Hi to everybody in the chat. So wonderful to see you there. Special welcome to all our members to the channel. Thank you for doing that. All right, we have some fun planned. I'm Natalie. This is Scientology Life After a Cult, where I recap in the morning Scientology news that has the internet buzzing. I also share about my 3 generations of my family in Scientology and how we left. And I get to do my favorite thing, which is interviewing people within the ex-Scientology community, whether they've been in Scientology or not, if they're involved in the protests, just what's going on with Scientology in general. And I'm really excited because tonight I get to interview somebody who had a huge impact on me in leaving Scientology. When I decided that I wanted to leave, and I took those first steps of getting on the internet and taking a look at what was out there about Scientology secretly. I would go down into my basement with my laptop, get on the internet, read about Scientology, clear my browser history, and close that thing up. It's like I was down there doing who knows what, but all I was doing was looking at stuff about Scientology and finding out the truth about Scientology. And Jeff Hawkins was someone who at the time was sharing through a blog about his experiences and really exposing a lot of the abuses at the top of Scientology at the international base. And I was riveted by his blog, and it helped me really feel secure in my decision that I was doing the right thing in leaving Scientology. He wrote a book. I can't wait to talk to him and have you guys get to know him. I've never met him, so this is a first for me as well. So I would love it if you're new to the channel, if you would hit that subscribe button. Please hit the like button. It's going to help us get out notifications. And if you've been here before, at some point, check your button and make sure that you are still subscribed. Thank you so much to my mods this evening. Nancy's here. Dip Me in Glitter is here. And I think my Tony is in there as well. If you have a question, please put question in all caps and have your question follow. That'll help us keep an eye on it. So I think that's pretty much all of our housekeeping. And I'm going to bring in, I'd like y'all to welcome into the main stage, Jeff Hawkins. Hello. Hip hip hooray.
Yeah, now, thanks for having me on.
Yes, there is the tiniest echo. Somebody tell me in the chat if you can hear it or it's just on my end. I think, Jeff, you might have something coming through the computer and it getting picked up on the mic a little bit.
I think, well, it's coming through the headphones. So
yeah,
that might,
yep. So Nancy can hear the echo. Can you hear it, Jeff?
I'm not hearing an echo.
Okay, it's only when I talk, which means it's probably... there's a second mic or something where is the sound coming through your computer at all or just your headphones?
Just my headphones.
Okay. Do you have another browser open by chance that has YouTube on it?
I have my iPad open to your YouTube.
Okay. So you might want to like shut that or just turn down the volume on there maybe or mute it.
Let's just see. Okay, let's...
yeah, because it's only when I speak, which tells me it's...
okay, I turned the volume all the way down.
Yeah.
Try that. Better?
Nope, I can still... oh, that sounds better. There we go.
Oh, okay.
I think we're okay. Nope, I can still hear it. Do you need the iPad? Is the iPad what you're currently on?
Yeah, no, I can turn it off.
Yeah, let's try that and see if that handles it.
Yeah.
And welcome again, everybody. I'm glad some of you who've not been able to catch a live before are able to do that. That's very cool.
Okay, so the iPad is off.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes a difference or...
let's see. It's just a little bit. Do you need the headphones to hear? Someone's recommending that maybe we try... are you speaking through the mic that's on the headphones? Oh wait, maybe it's okay now.
I don't think so.
Okay, I think I can hear it a little bit, but people are saying it's okay, so we'll just go with it because it's very, very faint anyways at this point. Okay, welcome, Jeff Hawkins.
Well, thank you for having me.
Hip, hip, hooray. I'm really excited. I don't think we've met. Have we ever met?
We've never met in person. No, I'm familiar with your channel and so forth.
Yes.
Yeah.
So as I was telling people, I left Scientology 13 years ago, and when it took me 2 years from when I decided I was going to leave to come up with and execute a plan so that I could leave with as much of my family as I could, because I had 3 generations of my family in Scientology.
Yeah.
So your blog that you were doing before you wrote the book, can you, well, first, actually, can you share a little bit about your history in the Sea Org with people who might not be familiar with your story?
Okay. Well, I was in Scientology for 35 years, so that's a long story, and
Mhm.
that's why I wrote the book is
Yeah.
to put it all in writing because it's a long, most of my adult life. Um, I started out in Los Angeles. Um, I was living at the time in Sierra Madre Canyon, which at that time, 1967, was the largest hippie community outside of Haight-Ashbury.
Mhm.
Um, and so I was a long haired hippie, and somebody from the LA org came out to the canyon and uh, sort of gave an impromptu intro lecture, which I didn't even go to, but a
Mhm.
friend of mine did. And he came and he was all excited about it. And he says, "Oh, I've got to tell you about this Scientology thing." And it sounded interesting. So we went down to the LA org the next week for an intro lecture.
Mhm.
And in those days, LA org on 9th Street in an old craftsman house, 2-story craftsman house, nothing fancy, um, but it was packed. There were like hundreds of people in the org, and it was like the thing to do in those days was Scientology, and everybody was finding out about it and going down to the org. I mean, it was really packed with all kinds of people,
Mhm.
young, old, everything. And we went to the lecture, and they had a very good lecturer at that time, a guy named Seton Thomas, who was a really good lecturer, and he was um, very convincing and very well spoken and very enthusiastic. He was kind of like a Tony Robbins kind
Sure.
of guy, just very personable and very dynamic and so forth. And then I went to the bookstore and I bought 3 books. And over the next week, I read all 3. And then I went down after that and enrolled on the COM course, which was the standard thing that new people did,
Yeah, the communications course.
the communications course, which was taught directly off the HCOBs. Um, there wasn't any separate course back or anything. We were reading the TRs,
Mhm.
HCOBs, and doing TRs.
Sure. And I just want to let people know, because the vast majority of our audience has never been in Scientology. HCOBs are the Hubbard Communication Office Bulletins. It's the technical things L. Ron Hubbard would write, and they were written in red ink on white paper.
Yep. So then I was pretty much hooked at that point,
Mhm.
and I did the level 0 auditor course and did some auditing, and I saw a brochure for the publications organization in England. And at that time, I was working as a graphic designer in LA,
Mm.
and I thought, well, I could help them out with my graphic design experience because I was receiving the magazine from the Los Angeles organization, and it was horrible, badly designed and badly written, and it just grated on me. And down to the org, to the LA org, and I said, I said, your magazine is really bad. I said, maybe I can help you improve it. And they took me into the back and they showed me what they were calling shooting boards for the magazine, which was they received these from worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had to strip in their addresses and their completions and all the local stuff. But the basic design was coming from worldwide. And so I said, well, what's this worldwide? And they said, well, that's the management of Scientology. And they said part of that is the publications organization, which does the magazine. And I thought, okay, well, then that's where I've got to go, is to the publications organization, because that's where the problem is with all this horrible promotion that we're putting out. And
Yeah.
I ended up going to England and up to Scotland, and I joined staff at the publications organization. And I was there for some years, for about a year, and then we moved to Copenhagen, Denmark.
Was this in the Sea organization or just as a staff member?
Just as a staff member.
Okay.
It wasn't Sea Org at that time. And then we moved to Denmark, and I was at the Denmark Pubs Org
Mm-hmm.
for quite a few years. And then I was sent to the ship, the Apollo, for executive training, which was the org exec course and the flag executive briefing course and the data series evaluators course. All of these were courses that were supposed to train up an executive in Hubbard's marvelous administrative technology.
Mm-hmm.
So I completed all of those courses, and I went back to Pubs as the commanding officer of Pubs Org. And I was only about 24 at the time, I think. So I was running an org at 24.
Yeah.
And I did that for a while, bombed out. I was removed by a Sea Org mission and put on the decks on the Athena, which was in Copenhagen at the time.
On the ship?
On the Athena. I was on the deck project force on the Athena,
Mm-hmm.
which was the European station ship at that time. So, and I did that for a while, and I went back to Pubs. And then one day, the CO of Pubs at that time got a message from the ship, and it said that Hubbard was starting up a marketing organization, marketing unit on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And his message says, "Get Hawkins from Pubs Denmark."
Wow.
It was like he named me, so I couldn't say no at that point.
Mm-hmm.
That was like a personal summons from
Hubbard.
Yeah, exactly. So I went there and went to the ship and became a part of the first marketing unit on the ship, and got involved in doing the magazines and doing these brochures that Hubbard wanted done. He was taking pictures. He had something called the Photo Shoot Org, which was the precursor to Golden Era and the Scientology media productions and all that. This was the first iteration of that, which was called the Photo Shoot Org. And they would set up these backgrounds and get the crew into some kind of amazingly poor costume and go out somewhere and shoot these pictures. And the pictures were awful.
And this was L. Ron Hubbard was there at the time?
Oh, yeah.
So you met him and worked with him?
Yeah.
Okay.
I met him a couple of times, and I was present at a conference that he gave to the marketing unit,
Mm-hmm.
which was, it's only about 5 or 6 of us at the time. And, I was sitting directly across from his desk as he talked,
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I was mainly dealing with his messengers. on the ship, and they would come and find me, and they'd tell me what Hubbard needed, or what he wanted to know, or what he, I would send up my designs for the brochures, and he would send a message down saying, well, you have to do this and this and this. So there was a lot of back and forth with him, but it was via the messengers.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, the messengers in Scientology represented L. Ron Hubbard in the Sea organization. And if you were talking to a messenger, you were talking to L. Ron Hubbard.
Totally. And that's when I first met Janice and her and all the messengers at that time. And they were great. They were very polite to people. They were never abusive. They were just other crew members, and they were always friendly and very businesslike. So that was kind of that. And then we got word that we were going to form a land base for the flagship. It was going to be a flag land base. And we went to Florida. We first landed in Daytona and worked there for a couple of months, I think it was. And then in November, we moved to Clearwater, and the hotel there, the
Flag, where Flag is?
Where Flag is now, the Fort Harrison Hotel. And there was another building, which was called the Bank Building, where most of the offices were. And so it wasn't as big as it is now in Clearwater, but there was quite a bit of property that we had, and so forth. And then we were racing around in uniforms for a while, and then that became a PR flap, and we had to dress in civilian clothes.
Because the people of Clearwater were uncomfortable with the Sea Org members running around?
Yeah, exactly. All these uniformed people running around downtown. It was kind of like, what? What is this? So we all had to dress in WOG clothes, and which I had none of at that time. And so I had to go shopping and get some acceptable WOG clothes. And then then after that, I was sent on a mission to LA to hire a PR firm. This was after the GO had been dismantled.
The Guardian's office, which then became the Office of Special Affairs.
Yeah. So I was called out there by the executive director, International, to do a mission to find a PR firm that the church could use. And so I did that mission. And then I had always had a kind of burning desire to do a big, raw public campaign for Scientology.
Yeah.
So I thought that was where the future is. We're not going to, Scientology is not going to go mainstream until we get a lot more people in. So I wanted to do this big public campaign. So I wrote a petition to CMO Int.
That's the Commodore's Messenger Org International.
International, yes. And I wrote a petition outlining what I wanted to do with this campaign. I said I want to do about 6 months worth of research, marketing research and surveying, and then launch the campaign after about 6 months of really digging on the research, which nobody had ever done before. I got that approved by CMO Int, and I became a CMO Int missionaire at that point. Started a small unit. We began with just 3 or 4 people, and it eventually expanded to about a dozen people over the years. And that was the beginning of the Dianetics campaign.
Yeah, tell people about, because I bet you most people here don't understand, like, that you're the guy who came up with that campaign in the 80s with the volcano and all that, right? that was a real game changer back at that time for Dianetics,
Yeah, yeah.
Scientology.
It was a game changer for all of Scientology at the time because they had never run a
Yeah,
big campaign. A couple of people had tried to do Dianetics campaigns, but had mostly failed.
yeah,
So, but I was going to approach it from a different point of view because I was going to do a lot of research, a lot of surveying, and I had to really dig in and study um, log advertising and marketing. Um, because Hubbard had written down and he had said, our marketing people need to study WOG
yeah,
marketing and WOG advertising. So
yeah.
that was my cover, you know.
Yeah, there's and Jeff, just so you know too, there's I came to learn this. I did not know this until I came on YouTube, but people would prefer we say like non-Scientologists because in other certain parts of the world that word means something incredibly derogatory.
Oh,
So
totally.
yeah, and I know
Yeah,
it was the language back then. I totally get that. But if you could refer to them as non-Scientologists or as Scientology did, raw meat.
yeah, yeah, exactly. New people, raw
Yeah,
meat.
new people. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. No, that is a very racist term.
Yeah.
WOG. Yeah.
So you
It,
did all these, you did this, like you dug in, you did the surveys, you found out like what the buttons were out there in society, and you learned how marketing outside of Scientology worked, how those
yeah.
things worked. You come up with this campaign that was incredibly successful.
Yeah, in the beginning, it wasn't that successful. I mean, it
Mhm.
was, I think, the first week of the campaign, and we did TV ads. This was before the question ads that I did later. Um, we had a couple of ads that had been scripted by an advertising company that I hired.
Sure.
I was dealing with non Scientologist research and advertising people this
Wow.
whole time.
Hmm.
And yeah, the guy I was using for creative work was a former creative director for Chiat Day in Chicago, which was a big advertising firm. So, and the research person I was using had been a researcher, a market researcher in the non Scientology world.
Hmm.
So, so I was using pros and I was learning a lot about marketing myself in my study time,
Hmm.
reading all of these books and so forth. And the first week that we launched that campaign, I think we sold 500 books, which was impressive at the time.
Hmm.
I mean, it was more than the orgs were selling,
Yeah.
you know. So, and Hubbard wrote down at the time, and he said to international management, and he said, you have a winning horse here that is not being fed enough oats,
Mm.
referring to the funding for the campaign. So after that, all I had to do was wave that in the front of the finance committee and get whatever funding I needed, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and I considered Hubbard at that time to be an ally of mine
Yeah.
because he understood that this was important. This needed to be done, you know. And a
Yeah.
lot of other people didn't, and a lot of other executives were trying to stop the campaign, frankly.
Mm. Why do you think that is?
Um, well, number one, they were never interested in most Scientology executives, and this is true right up to today. They are not interested in a lot of new people coming in
Mm-hmm.
because that would blow up orgs and waste a lot of staff time in trying to make them into Scientologists, and you wouldn't see that on the stat graphs for maybe months.
Yeah, because they would need to buy the book, then they would need to maybe come in and do a service. That's
Yeah,
interesting that you say that because L. Ron Hubbard always said in his policies that the reason orgs exist is to sell and deliver materials to the public and get public in to sell and deliver to. And at an international management level, you're saying they had no interest in putting resources into these campaigns, which would actually do that.
Exactly. And so then this went on to 1986, and I wanted to do some new ads, because that was always a big selling point with the bookstores and the book chains, was we have a new ad, that was supposed to get them excited. And so I was playing around with a print ad, for the newspapers, and it had the Dianetics book in the center, and then it had all kinds of questions around the book, like how can you increase your self-confidence?
Sure.
What causes war? And just all these kind of generic questions around it. And then it said page such and such, page such and such, and then it all pointed into the book.
Yeah.
With lines going into the book. And I gave that to my creative director, the Chiat Day guy. And he looked it over and he said, why don't we make this into a TV ad? And I said, okay. And he said, yeah, why not? He said, it'll be cheap to make because it's just questions on the screen, text, and then you have a picture of the book, which we already had from previous ads that we'd done. And it would cost nothing to put together, So I made storyboards showing question, and then the book. And I took it up to Int Management because I had clearance at that time to go up there for a weekly meeting. And I presented it to all the international executives. They didn't get it. They didn't understand it at all. It was kind of like, that's not an ad. What are you talking about? And so I was pretty discouraged, and I went back to LA and talked it over with my creative guy. And I said, well, why don't we just make it? Let's just make the ad, because it's not going to cost us anything, maybe a half hour or an hour in an editing bay, and we'd have it put together, So we did. And then put some music to it. And so I called upon my good friend, still a good friend, Jeff Levin. Him and his partner had a music production studio in LA, Juniper Studios. And I went to them and I said, I want something. I had been listening to some electronic music, and there was a group that I liked called Tangerine Dream, which some people may remember or may not remember, but their music was very tense and staccato, bop, 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 bop. So I told Jeff, I said, I want something like that, something very tense, that's going to get attention. So they did that famous Dianetics music, bop, 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 bop. And we laid it against the thing. And I found a guy, an announcer guy, who could do a deep basso James Earl Jones type voice. He was just great, a great guy. And he recorded this. And he said, what kind of a voice do you want? And I said, I want the voice of God, And so he recorded it, and, the book Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health. And it was just perfect. He really nailed this James Earl Jones kind of rumble. And it just sounded like the universe was coming apart. And so I laid that in, and then I took the finished ad up to Int, which was in Gilman Hot Springs, and played it for them. And they were like, oh, now we get it. That is an ad. Yeah. Perfect. So, and about that same time, I had a media a media buyer who was a Scientologist, who was rather brilliant at media buying. And she came to me and she said, there's something new that you should know about, and it's called cable TV. Totally new at that time. And this was in 84. And she said, Nielsen, the market research company, Nielsen, had not rated. They said they haven't rated this yet. A Nielsen rating tells you how many people are watching.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody knew how many people were watching this. And at that time, I was not running anything national. We had never run a national campaign. Too expensive. And so she said, Nielsen hasn't rated it, so the price is low. And I said, well, what's their demographic? And I looked at their demographic breakdown, age, education level, and it utterly matched the demographic of that I was looking for Scientology. It was about 60-40 male over female, some college education, not necessarily college graduates, and I think the age was 18 to 35 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, this is perfect. This matches our demographic exactly. And she said, great. Do you want to run a test? And I said, no, I don't want to run a test. I want to just go with it.
Mm-hmm.
Take our entire budget and put it into cable. And let's use the new ad, the question ad. So we did that. We put the entire budget onto cable TV and we ran the question ad. And oh my God, the book sales just went boom, 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 boom. Straight up.
Straight up and vertical.
Straight up and vertical. And it was one of those things where we had to add extensions onto the graph.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was going so high.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was getting reports from the three major book outlets in the U.S. And so I had an indicator of how the sales were going, and it was going up and up, and we had to add more things and then go across the ceiling. Yeah. And I remember there was one week where we sold 30,000 books. 30,000 books. And it was just unheard of. And it started popping onto all of the bestseller lists, national bestseller lists. Mm-hmm. Walton Books, Speed Alton Bookseller. It was just bum, 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 up, 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 up. And it was going up the bestseller list. And then finally popped onto the New York Times bestseller list, mm-hmm. which is like the Pulitzer Prize of book selling. If you get on the New York Times bestseller list, you've made it. That's like the Good Housekeeping seal of approval. And so that was a big deal,
Yeah.
So we just kept pumping it, and the book sales just went up and up and up. And at that point, we were inserting these more information cards into every book.
Oh, I remember those. Yeah.
Remember those? Yeah.
Them out and send them in. Yes, I remember having to call people on those. Oh, you buy a Dianetics book. I see you want more information. And then you could get them into the organization.
Yes. And so we were collecting all of those more information cards and putting their name into the addresso and sending the cards out to the orgs. And I was told by Div Sixers at the time that was the number one source of new people coming into Scientology, mm-hmm. was those more information cards.
Yeah.
So, and that kicked off a boom at the end of the 1980s. Scientology was just booming with new people coming into the org. And some people in management got it. They understood what I was doing. Some didn't, Some some were saying, well, these people are coming in, but they're not going on to service, and so your campaign is really a failure. And I had a lot of people tell me that my campaign was a failure.
Mm-hmm.
And because after that initial boom, it kind of leveled off at a higher level.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like, oh, your campaign is in emergency, therefore it's downstat, it's a failed campaign. And I got this over and over and over again.
Which is so ridiculous because even by Scientology's own standards, if it's at a, in a higher range like that, that would be considered. In Scientology, we've talked a little bit on the channel, there's these different conditions and steps that you're supposed to follow. And that would be like power.
That would be a power condition, yeah, but
Yeah.
it was never acknowledged as such, which is crazy. And then I launched a second book, Self-Analysis,
Mm-hmm.
onto the book trade lines as a paperback. And it's called a trade paperback. It's the size of a normal hardback book, but with a soft cover.
Mm-hmm.
And I launched that book. We did ads for it and put it out into the book trade. And it sold pretty well. But it was like, I can demonstrate this. Sort of demonstrate it here. Kind of like that. Sales went up and up and up and then leveled off and then started a slight decline at that higher level.
Sure.
And I was assigned lower conditions. I was, because it was going slightly down every week.
Yeah. Yeah. Forget that it's in an entirely new range. Is this when things started to kind of go downhill for you in the Sea organization?
Yeah, definitely. So, so it was labeled as a failed campaign and I was assigned conditions and had to work through lower conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of the year, Publishers Weekly magazine, which is the magazine of the book trade, listed Self-Analysis as the 11th best-selling trade paperback that year. And that was a failed campaign, according to the powers that be.
Who were the powers that be at that time?
Pretty much the ones that are there now.
David Miscavige?
I think Miscavige was there. Mark Ingber, Mark Yeager, those guys. And they never really appreciated the campaign. And there was always an attempt to stop it, which, I didn't understand that at all. It makes no sense. And there's a story that I tell in my book. The executive director international at the time was a guy named Kerry Gleason, who passed away a couple of months ago. He and I never got along. And at one point, he sent a mission to my unit in LA. And they came marching in uniforms, everything, and showed me their mission orders. And I read over them, and it would basically have dismantled my unit.
And was your unit, Jeff, the Central Marketing Unit?
It was not called that at the time.
Okay.
I mean, it was called I think we called it the Strategic Book Marketing Unit or something like that.
Did that evolve into the Central Marketing Unit later?
Sort of. Yeah, sort of.
Okay.
But so these two missionaries came in, and I read over their mission orders, and I was like, no way can this happen.
Yeah.
So I said, well, let me give you an inspection of my unit here. And we had a supply closet as part of the unit. And I opened that up and I said, this is where all of our supplies are. You might want to check that out. Both the missionaries went into the supply closet and I closed and locked the door. Things like that in those days,
You locked them in the closet for how long?
It ended up being, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes. I went and called. I had a couple of friends and allies at Author Services,
Mm-hmm.
which was Hubbard's, literary organization.
Yeah, and very high up in the hierarchy of Scientology organizations.
Oh, totally. They were like next to Hubbard
Yeah.
in terms of their authority. And I had a couple of friends over there. One was Franny Harris, um, and she was an executive at ASI.
Mm-hmm.
And she is the one that received my weekly reports, forwarded them to Hubbard. So he was reading my weekly reports. And I got Franny on the phone and I told her what was happening with this mission.
And that
she
you had
said,
locked them in the closet.
yeah. And she said, I'll call you right back. So I'm sitting there waiting for her to call me back. And like 5 minutes or something like that. And I'm hearing the banging on the door, coming from the other room. And after about 5 minutes, Franny calls me back and she says, their mission has been recalled. She just called somebody, and that was that. They were recalled. So I went over, unlocked the door, let them out, and I said, you've been recalled. Now get the fuck out of my office. Very satisfying.
So then you're working in marketing, you're doing all of this in this organization. At what point did things really start to go south?
Well, there was a later mission that came into the area to establish a central marketing organization, which was going to be called Central, and which did happen. But what they did was they took all of my staff and put them out over the org board. Like they took my researcher and put her into a general research area that was supposed to research everything having to do with Scientology.
Mm-hmm.
And they took my PR person and put them into a generalized PR area that was supposed to do PR for everything. So in essence, I had no more unit at that point.
Yeah, so they dismantled the unit.
They dismantled the unit, which is completely off policy.
Oh yeah, it's what did they call that? What did they call that in Scientology? It was dismantling a working installation,
unmocking a working installation.
Yes,
yeah. Which is it's like a high crime in Scientology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but that was done, and you can take Scientology statistics, and you can draw a line right when that happened. And before that, they're going up, 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 up. And at that point, which was mid 1991, the stats started going down, 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 down. And we're still going down when I left in 2005.
Wow.
An international crash of Scientology happened at that point. And they kept doing all of these evals to try to find out what happened. And all of the evals.
And those, just so everybody knows, those are evaluations that Scientology would do to find out if an area is not doing well. They would investigate and evaluate the area to come up with a program to get it back straightened out again.
Yeah, yeah. And so it would always come back to the fact of the Dianetics campaign. And so then the evaluator would write a program, and there would be, restart the Dianetics campaign. And that would be assigned to me.
Yeah.
And so then I would say, okay, can I get some staff? Oh, no staff, just you. Can I get some money? No money. We're not giving you any money or any staff or any time or anything. I was just supposed to magically conjure this up from whole cloth, myself with no help, which was never how the campaign had been run. I had, non-Scientology professionals working for me. I had a whole media firm with hundreds of staff working for me. I had had a research area that was running a network, a national network of surveyors.
Mm-hmm.
I had all these resources when I was doing the Dianetics campaign, but they were like, no, no, you don't get any resources. You don't get any money. It's just you sitting at a desk. And I was like, are you nuts?
Mm-hmm.
But so I got mushed into the overall central marketing organization. And that was kind of my position from then on was, and I would occasionally be a writer, and I would be asked to write things like ads.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a lot of experience with Scientology magazines from my time at the publications org. And I had at one time been the editor of Advanced magazine for the Advanced orgs.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a lot of magazine experience and design experience and writing experience. So I did those activities on and off. And at one point I became the CO of
the commanding officer.
The commanding officer, which was hell. I mean, that was just terrible. Because, this was under David Miscavige now. So it was just unending stress and sabotage and nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
So that went on for years. And when I left, I was posted as a copywriter in central marketing.
What was the thing that happened where you did you leave? How did you end up leaving the Sea organization?
I ended up just saying I want out, and
Mm-hmm.
they put me on a routing form,
Mm-hmm.
leaving staff routing form or leaving the Sea Org routing form, whatever it was. So I had to do about 4 months of sec checks
Mm-hmm.
in order to interrogations.
Yeah.
In order to be cleared to
leave.
leave.
Mm-hmm.
So I went through that. I did it by the book. I routed out according to their rules, which didn't, save me from being declared an SP.
So they still declared you a suppressive person, even though you did what they said was the right thing to do by doing the routing form.
Yes,
Isn't that
exactly.
typical? You broke up with them. You said you wanted to leave. You did the breaking up, and they turned around and act like they kicked you out.
And, they say that about me, like they say that about anybody who's speaking out. Oh, he's just disaffected because he was kicked out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They always say that about everyone who left. They say
Mm-hmm.
that about Leah. They say
Yeah.
Leah was kicked out of Scientology. She never
Mhm.
was.
No, she broke up with them as well.
Exactly.
So you do the routing form, you leave, you still get declared, but while you're there at, around all of this craziness, and you get into some of this in your book, can you, for people who don't know, kind of share some of what you witnessed, which is a lot of what you ended up sharing later on?
Yeah, and this was eventually why I left, is that I saw David Miscavige being physically abusive to staff. Like we'd be in a meeting and he would take an executive and just throw them to the ground. They would be sitting in their chair and he would just take them and the chair and just throw it to the ground.
Wow.
In the middle of a meeting.
What would the person do then? So he David Miscavige grabs them, throws them to the ground. Would anyone fight back?
No, nobody ever. I think only one person ever threatened to fight back. And that's I don't know if you know Jesse Prince.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. In his book, he talks about how he had an altercation with Miscavige.
Mm-hmm.
And he was working right under Miscavige. And Miscavige was like screaming and yelling at him and so forth. And Jesse went back to his where he was sleeping and got a gun and went back to Miscavige and threatened him with the gun. And Miscavige was like, no, I apologize. Freaked him out.
Wow. Yeah, and I mean, Jesse Prince is not a small man.
No.
David Miscavige is little.
Yeah.
Sized.
Yeah, but I love that story. It's just like, Not that I condone violence,
Yeah.
not at all. But
Did David Miscavige was he ever physically abusive towards you?
oh yeah, yeah. I describe a number of incidents in my book, and probably the one that is most memorable was I had been offloaded from CMU and sent to various kind of re-education camp places,
Mm-hmm.
not RPF, but they would periodically offload a bunch of troublemakers, as we were called.
Yeah.
To We went to the Int Ranch at one point. We went to the Pack Ranch at another point, and so I was going back and forth. I was offloaded, I think, a total of 4 times, and brought back because they didn't have any writers. They didn't have anybody who could write things
Mm-hmm.
except me.
Sure.
So I would get brought back and put back on writing, you know. So at one point I was asked to write an infomercial for Dianetics, and I had done that before, and I had written an infomercial for a Dianetics package, which was the book, an outreach lecture on Dianetics, and a video which I had also written and produced called "How to Use Dianetics."
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and that's my
Mm-hmm.
that was my product, and so I was asked to write a second infomercial for
Mm-hmm.
Dianetics. So I said okay, and as I usually did, I went into research mode and I read every book that I could on infomercials and how to write infomercials. And these books were by pros in that area, people who wrote infomercials for a living.
Mm-hmm.
And and I contacted the author of one of those books, who was like probably the number one infomercial guy in the U.S. at the time. And I said, who's the best infomercial writer that you know? And he referred me to this lady, and he said, she's absolutely the best. So I contacted her and I said, I'm writing an infomercial, for Dianetics, and I wonder if you'd be willing to help me with that. And she said, sure, to send me what you've got. So I finished the draft, sent it to this lady, and she was a total pro. And she said, okay, you need to have 3 8-minute segments. And at the end of each of those 8-minute segments, you need to have an ad. So, in other words, the show goes on for 8 minutes, and then it's like, okay, here's the ad for the Dianetics. It's called the Dianetics Kit.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the Dianetics Kit, and here's what it contains. And if you order now, you can get it for only $19.95, and so forth. So she walked me through the entire process of infomercial writing, step by step.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally she said, okay, this is good. This will sell. This is the number one infomercial writer in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Said, this is good. You've got it. This will sell. And so I sent it up to Miscavige, some time goes by, a few days, and then I get called up to the conference room at CMOINT, which is this huge table in the middle of the CMOINT space there. Miscavige is on one side, and all of the INT execs are facing him on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
This is the way he liked to conduct his meetings. He's on one side, and everybody else is on the other side. So it's like his stage.
Yeah.
And so I get up there, and I sit down across from him, and he picks up my script, and he goes, you guys seen the crap this guy's writing? Slams down my script, and then he starts very sarcastically reading, some segments of it. And I said, what's that? That's just crap. And I was thinking, what?
Mm-hmm.
This had just been declared to be good and saleable by the number one infomercial writer in America, and I wanted to kind of give him some of that information, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Sir, if I could just," and then he just exploded, and he said, "You see how he looks at me? You see how he talks to me? Blah blah. The only thing I want to hear out of your mouth is your crimes. That's all I want to hear from you. What are your crimes? You know?" And I'm just like, "What the heck is going on?" You know?
Yeah.
Because, you know, frankly, I was Scientology's #1 writer at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and I had written this as a professional,
Mm-hmm.
that as something that would sell, you know. And he's just reacting like a middle school bully,
Yeah.
and he's just like, "You see how he looked at me? You see how this guy looks at me?" And I'm like, "What? What do I look? What am I looking like?" You know, and all of the execs around me. This is the entirety of CMO and exec strata, and they're all like, "Stop looking at him like that. Stop looking at him like that." And I'm like, "What?" You know, and they're all cowed by him to this day. You know, all of the international execs, who are none of them are on post anymore, but they're all completely cowed. And then he's a little guy. He's this little wiry guy. He
Yeah.
jumped up on the conference room table
He jumped onto the table.
with his feet on the table, ran across and launched himself at me and started hitting me on the face. And I fell to the ground, and my shirt had been ripped, and all the buttons had been lost. They were all over the floor, and I was just laying on the ground, and my feet were entangled in his because
Mm-hmm.
of the way that he had launched himself at me and the way I had fallen. And he was like, "Let go of my feet," you know, because
Yeah.
my feet ended up around his.
Yeah.
He was like, "Let go of my feet," and I'm like, "Yes, whatever," you know. And then he stormed out of the room, and all these execs were like, "Get up, get up, get up! Don't make him wrong." In other words, if I continued to lay on the ground, I was making him wrong somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So this whole thing was my fault, you know,
Yeah.
which is how it always gets spun. What did you do to make Miscavige so mad? You know, you
Yeah.
must have done something. And
And
so
these are the most, just to kind of paint a picture for people, these are the most senior executives in Scientology that are around there that are witnessing this. They watch him jump on the table, charge at you, repeatedly assault you, knock you to the ground. He leaves, and everybody who witnesses this basically blames you for it.
right, right, absolutely. They were like, "Get up, get up, get up," you know, this sort of thing. And yeah, so I was blamed. I was put onto interrogations, security checks, um, you know, and I was eventually offloaded again, you know, to, I think it was to the Ant Ranch at that point.
For punishment.
So, yeah, so I was being punished for him beating me up, you know,
Mm, that
which
sounds
is
on
just
brand for Miscavige.
totally on brand for him. And everybody else was too timid to do anything about it or even speak out against that kind of treatment because they didn't want to be beat up. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah. And even
They,
though, Jeff, I think maybe help people understand, even though David Miscavige is a fun-sized human who many people could take, can you kind of explain to people the mentality of that, why there was so much fear and why no one really raised a hand to him?
yeah, there's a story that I like to tell about that, which is I met this guy one time after I was out
Mhm.
who had been, he had been a Navy SEAL, big guy, you know, tough guy, you know. And I told him the story about being beat up by Miscavige, and he was like, "Why, I would have pulverized that little guy." You know, he was like, you know, macho guy. "I would have just pulverized that guy." And I just said one thing to him. I said, "Suppose he was an admiral.
Mm.
And he just stopped and thought a minute, and then he said, I get it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Miscavige is like the top guy. He can say, you're going to the RPF, and you go to the RPF.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there is just no, you can't appeal his things. You can't counter him. You
What he
can't. This is
says goes.
what he says goes. And I have seen that in action. I was in a meeting one time, and this staff member came in to deliver something to one of the executives in the meeting, and he just delivered that and then left. And then Miscavige says, "What's he still doing here?" And within hours, he was on the RPF.
Mm,
Just
yeah.
because Miscavige didn't want to see him, you know.
Couldn't be in his presence. Did you witness, were there other senior executives at that time that you witnessed David Miscavige physically abusing?
Yes, um, Mike Render.
Mm-hmm.
I saw him. I saw Miscavige take his chair and throw him in the chair to the ground on two separate occasions. Um, and Mike never got any sleep. He was up round the clock pretty much every day. Um, if I was to name the person who was most abused at the Ent base, I would say Mike Render.
Most physically abused at the international base would be Mike Rinder.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. So he
I
got
saw,
the brunt of the physical beatings by David Miscavige.
yes, several times I saw that. I saw him hit Lyman Spurlock once. You know,
Yeah,
um,
another senior executive in Scientology.
yes, and Mark Yeager.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, he just used to. There was one time we were having a meeting, and he went outside, and a bunch of us kind of joined him there. And so there were like four executives or three executives and me facing him. And he came up to me and hit me on the side of the head with his fists, like bang, 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 bang. Which, oh, can you still hear me?
I can still hear you. You're a little frozen, but I bet it'll come back. But we can hear you.
Oh, good. Yeah, for some reason my screen went blank. I don't know why. Anyway, so he hit me on the side of the head
Mm-hmm.
with both hands, and then he hit Mark Ingber, and then he went over and started to hit Mark Yeager, just collapsed onto the ground in a fetal position to
Wow.
avoid being hit. You know.
Yeah, Jeff, your camera, I think, is out. Um,
Yes.
you think
Boy,
it's your internet?
I am not sure what it is here. Um,
Let me try pulling you down and up.
says I'm
Do
in
you
the.
want?
Let me go to.
Yeah, I can hear you. It's almost as if your camera shut off. It's all just dark.
Yeah. Not sure why.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is funny.
Yeah, we can hear you, and we're gonna wrap up. So I just want to make sure I understood what you said. So this was an example where David Miscavige came out, knocks. What do they call that? Boxing someone when you hit him on both ears like that?
Yeah, I don't know
Yeah, and then
the
he
term.
proceeded to physically beat two other senior executives in Scientology, and one of them just went to the ground in the fetal position, and that's Mark Yeager. And Mark Yeager is a very tall man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, did
Yep.
he ever hit any female executives? Busy, thank you for that.
Oh, um, but what he would do is have one of his. Um, there were certain people at the Ent base who were like his lieutenants, and they were
Yes.
people who were as abusive as he was. And one of them was named Lisa Schroer, and she
Hmm.
was the commanding officer of Golden Era Productions at the time. And he would have Lisa go and hit the females.
Oh my gosh. So he wouldn't hit the females himself. He would just get another female executive to hit other
Yes,
female executives in Scientology.
yes, exactly. And that happened to my wife once, where Lisa
Wow.
came and hit her, and you know, I she should just be thankful that I wasn't there. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so then you end up leaving after all of this and then get declared a suppressive person.
Oh, just lost your audio there.
Okay. I can still hear
Oh,
you.
there. You're back on. Yeah.
Okay, good, good.
Yeah.
I'm going to grab a few questions. Indigo Twin, thank you very much. That person says, keep up the good work and stay safe.
Yeah.
Also, Stephanie Slaughter says, I adore Jeff. He's a wonderful historian. I'm so glad he's here.
Oh,
That's
thank you. Thank you so much.
someone has a question. Pure Vita. I'm so curious about Parsons and Aleister Crowley's involvement with LRH and Scientology. Can we get a quick summary? Is that something you know something about?
I just know what's general knowledge, you know.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think soon I'm gonna speak with Scientology Peeling the Onion because I think they have some of the history on that when it comes to Jack Parson and Aleister Crowley. So we'll save
Yeah.
the question. Jeff, do you have a YouTube channel?
I don't. I think I'm going to have to get one at some point, you know.
Yep. Yep. I would say so. I would say
Yeah.
so. Someone's also asking Norman, whatever happened with Norman Starkey?
I heard that he passed.
Oh, wow.
Uh, and you know, Norman was an interesting guy. He was captain of the Apollo.
Hmm.
So he had the rank of captain right arm, and a right arm rank meant that you could actually captain a ship.
Hmm.
You know? So Norman was the captain on the Apollo, and I dealt with him when he was at ASI. And Norman, he had an incredible sense of humor, and he could be so funny when he chose to be.
Hmm.
But he could also be an asshole, you know, like like everybody at the base. You know, he was. Um, you either go along with what Miscavige is pushing and be as cruel as he is, or you become a victim. Yeah.
Yeah. That's very
So
true. I definitely think that is still the case that, either you're perpetuating these abuses or you're a victim of these abuses. And what was happening and probably is still happening at that level really lays that out
yeah,
and what you witnessed. So you went on to write a book, your book, Counterfeit Dreams. Where can people get the book?
it's on. Hang on, trying to do something with this camera, but nothing's happening. You can get my book on Amazon.
Okay, so people can go to Amazon, Counterfeit Dreams, and there's
Counterfeit
so
Dreams.
much more to this story that is in the book. It's been, I think, well, a very long time since I've read the book. But hearing you, I read these things in the book, but hearing you actually say them, it's so much more just shocking. And in the book, you share all of this. And when you left, since you left, what have you been up to? Or what are you up
Well,
to these days?
well, my training in the Sea Org and in Scientology was mostly as a graphic designer
Sure.
and as a writer.
Hmm.
So I the writing that I've done has been my book and my blogs and all of that. But outside of that, I had a graphic design firm here in Portland, um, and I ran that for a couple of years.
Hmm.
Tired from that, so I'm pretty much retired now.
Yes.
Not doing much graphic design, um, with the exception, if there's a Scientologist who's writing their memoir and they need a book cover, I'll design it for them. you know,
Oh, wow.
because that's kind of on purpose. I did Janice's book and a number of others, Amy Scobie's book, and so quite a few of the ex ex Scientology books.
Yeah, you've done the cover.
I've
That's so
done
interesting.
I've done the covers for, which is fun.
That is
And
fun. Well, hopefully, if I ever get around to finishing my book, maybe you could do my cover.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And for Janice's book, I also did all of the maps and diagrams for her book,
Hmm.
which was which was a lot of work. But there are diagrams of the Apollo in her book, deck by deck, what was on each deck,
Yeah.
it was fascinating to reconstruct that. You know,
Wow.
so
I'm so glad that you're doing that. I think we're definitely going to have to do a part two and have you on again and
I'd
talk
love to.
more about a lot of this. It's just absolutely fascinating. And there's so many people. I don't know how much you track on just with what's happening with the protests these days with Scientology. But Jeff, there are so many people. When I was wanting to leave Scientology, it was your blog post that you were sharing and your posting on the ex Scientology message board that
Mm,
really helped reinforce my desire to leave and confirm that I was doing the right thing and confirm that what I was seeing was actually reality in terms of how destructive Scientology was.
right, that is so great to hear. You
Yeah,
know,
it
I,
it it truly did.
yeah, I love to hear from Scientologists who have left because of something that I wrote. That
Yeah.
is very satisfying to me.
Yep,
You know,
absolutely, and I shared it with people in my family as well, and, I was able to leave with 3 generations of my family.
that's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I used a lot of that to help educate them. So we will do this again, Jeff. We'll do it again.
please. Yeah,
So you and
that
I
would be
will stay
great.
in touch. Yes, let's do it. And remember, people, you can get his book, Counterfeit Dreams, on Amazon. Jeff, I'm going to pull you off the screen here just so I can wrap up. Could you hold on for just a minute?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hang out in the green room. All right, there. The echo is happening on Jeff's side there. I'm definitely going to have him back on. I feel like there's so much more of this conversation that needs to happen. And I'm sure many of you have heard these stories about David Miscavige beating his staff. It's very different to hear it from the people directly that it happened to. And I had multiple reasons why I wanted to have Jeff on. His book is phenomenal. And like I said, when I was wanting to leave Scientology, a lot of what he shared before the book came out really helped me and helped my family know we were doing the right thing. So he has been around for a long time. And I really hope that he does start a YouTube channel. That would be absolutely fabulous. So make sure you guys hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. I appreciate you so much. I'm going to be doing a wrap up tomorrow morning. One thing I wanted to bring up, and I'll bring it up again tomorrow, is I think I'm going to, not probably this week, but eventually push the time. I come on Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. Central Time, but I think I might be switching that to 8 and wanted to get your thoughts on that. So I will bring that up tomorrow and we'll talk about it along with a whole bunch of stuff that we have to talk about tomorrow. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I truly appreciate you. Thank you so much to my mods who are helping out, and especially to the new members who are joining. I appreciate your support so much. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you guys tomorrow. In the meantime, I hope you get out and have an amazing cult-free day.